Hello and welcome to my new video. So today we will be going through some of the most hyped up books on BookTok, and I will be telling you my thoughts on them and if they are actually worth all the hype that they get. This is like huge, my god, but then the thing is I have so many books that I bought because of BookTok that I haven't read yet. These are just the ones I've read. I guess we will start with the chosen book, Aristotle and Dante Discover the Secrets of the Universe. This book is good. Pretty much it is about this boy named Aristotle who goes by Ari, and he is, I think he starts the book at like 13-ish, 12, and I think by the end he's like 16 or 17, and he pretty much is a teenage boy. He meets this guy named Dante, who quickly becomes his, I wouldn't say his only friend, but his closest friend, because he tells Dante things he wouldn't dream of telling his other friends. And they form a really quick bond, and it's about them discovering the secrets of the universe together. I think I ended up rating this 4 or 5 stars. I think one of the best things about this book is that it feels so real. These kids feel like they're 14 in the 70s. Also, I didn't mention that it takes place in like the 70s or 80s, so it's a dated piece, but it is amazing. Aristotle and Dante's relationship with each other is just heartwarming, and it just makes you feel young. I think that's going to be a common consensus throughout these books, but this book makes you feel young. Moving on, we have our icons, Alex and Henry. I almost forgot their names for a second. That was embarrassing. From Red, White, and Royal Blue by Casey McQuiston. This book was my first BookTok book. It was one of my first books ever, and oh my god, it is amazing. I understand it is cheesy, it is cliche, it is possessing Wattpad energy, but it is in the best way possible. This is like a book that you would dream, you know? It is just perfect in every way. I feel like everyone knows the premises of these books, but if you didn't know, Red, White, and Royal Blue is about the Prince of England, Henry, falling in love with well, I don't think he falls in love. I don't think either of them fall in love, to be honest, but they end up in love. It's the Prince of England, and Alex is the first son of the first female president of the United States. So it is like, you know, diplomatic relations nightmare. And I think everything in this was just so perfect. Alex and Henry, their personalities were the perfect amount of sarcastic, witty amazingness in them together. They bounced off each other amazingly. I ended up rating this 5 stars, like it deserves. This one is definitely worth the hype. Moving on, we have a double whammy here. We're going to rope these in together, and that is Daisy Jones and the Six and The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo, both by Taylor Jenkins Reid. These, along with Malibu Rising, all take place in like a connected universe of California, you know, this famous lifestyle. And these books were great. I love them both, but personally my favorite is Malibu Rising, which I don't have on me right now, but these are both amazing in their own right. All I have to say about Daisy Jones and the Six is that I rated it 5 stars, and it's about a band in the 70s and all the drama they get into, but it also has a very intriguing format that I really loved. Moving on to The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo, one of the most popular, most recommended books in all of BookTok. I think I've seen this book more times than I've seen Colleen Hoover books, which is saying something. This book is about Evelyn Hugo, who is this movie star in the 60s, and it takes place between times. You know, it goes back from when she's at the height of her fame, or when she's first starting, the height of her fame, and her whole life, her 7 husbands that she had. And it flips from that to her telling the story of her life to a journalist who is going to write her biography. Now, this journalist and Evelyn Hugo are connected in a very intriguing way. but you don't find out how they are connected until the end. And how they are connected was a jaw-dropping twist. I do think that this book is great, and I did end up rating it 5 stars, but I do think people go a little too crazy for it. But at the same time, Evelyn Hugo is a boss, and I aspire to be her when I'm an adult. I say as an adult. I do think that this is worth a read, but I think that some people obsess a little too much over it. But then again, who am I to judge? Obsess over what you want. It just personally wasn't something that I was obsessing over. Since we got our Taylor Jenkins read out of the way, let's do another double whammy with It Ends With Us. Again, one of the most, hyped up books of all time on BookTok, and Ugly Love by Colleen Hoover. Now, if you haven't read It Ends With Us, I would suggest looking up trigger warnings beforehand, but pretty much It Ends With Us is about this girl named Lily, and she ends up meeting this neurosurgeon Ryle, and it's about their relationship and how they are starting this relationship and building, a life together. And suddenly her first love, Atlas, if you have been anywhere on BookTok, you've seen the name Atlas from this book. Atlas unexpectedly comes back into her life, which makes her rethink on her past relationship while trying to build a future with Ryle. This is a very intense book. It is very chaotic. I don't even know how to describe it. Again, please look up trigger warnings because there is a lot in here. There's a lot to unpack. But I ended up rating it 5 stars. Like all of these books so far. Trust me, I promise there are some that are not 5-star reads. I promise you. But this one happened to be one. That being said, it is not my favorite Colleen Hoover book, and I don't think I could reread this for a very long time because it is so emotionally charged, because there is a lot here. On the flip side, Ugly Love, another very hyped up Colleen Hoover book on BookTok, is a lot tamer. It still has a lot of emotional trauma going on. There is some toxicity. I like most of Colleen Hoover books, with a few exceptions that they just didn't hit me, but Ugly Love is definitely one of my favorite books of all time. I think it's superior to It Ends With Us, but I think that It Ends With Us has a more important message, so I'm kind of being contradictory here, but these both, I think, are very good books. Both of these were 5-star ratings from me. Okay, we are finally at one I didn't rate 5 stars. Okay, are you proud of me? I feel so lame because I have really fed into the BookTok community and I've rated a bunch of these 5 stars, but sorry. It's not on BookTok as much. I think it had a very brief moment. It had its moment to shine, and that is The Midnight Library by Matt Haig. I didn't like this book. It felt like homework to read for me. I think that is a very interesting concept. It is about this girl named Nora who is stuck between the living and dead world in the Midnight Library. In the Midnight Library, she can pull off any book off the shelf and it will kind of transport her to this reality where she made a different decision in life. It teaches you a lot about regret and about life and like living life to the fullest and making decisions that you feel are right, and not making decisions for other reasons. I do have a lot of problems with this book. I think that it is trying to be very philosophical and important, but it doesn't have a lot of substance to back it up. There are a lot of things said in this book that are very simple concepts like live your life to the fullest that are riddled with complicated words and the sentence structure that doesn't really make sense in order to make it seem more profound than it is. In the end, I rated this 2 stars, I think, because it was a good book on the baseline. It was a good book. It just didn't hit me right, I guess, and I just felt like it was trying to be way more than it was. So, Midnight Library. I am so sorry, but we're back to another 5-star read, and it's one that I literally just finished. It was the last book I read, and that is A Good Girl's Guide to Murder, which is blowing up BookTok as of right now, by Holly Jackson. All I have to say about this book is that it is so realistic. A Good Girl's Guide to Murder is about Pip, and she has this senior project that she's doing, and she decides to do it on the disappearance/murder of this girl, Andy Bell, who went to her school and disappeared 5 years prior, and her boyfriend Sal had been not charged because he died also 5 years earlier, but he is kind of the guy everyone knows did it. She ends up teaming up with Sal's brother, and they end up trying to uncover things that were mishandled by the police to try and prove Sal's innocence. And when I tell you I hate murder mysteries, I say it with my whole heart. When I tell you that I loved this book, I also say it with my whole heart, because this book, it just gave off such a realistic vibe. I'm such a fan of true crime, and I think that this book is like literally feels like it could happen. Like every twist in it felt realistic, because true crime cases, if you watch some of them, they are insane. Like some of them are, they have the craziest plot twists in them, even though it happened in real life. And that is this book. Nothing in here felt forced. Nothing felt convenient. Everything felt like it was perfectly in place. And I think that that's just made it amazing. This book also gives off major Pretty Little Liars vibes. So if you liked Pretty Little Liars, you would definitely enjoy this book. Our first fantasy, which is Throne of Glass. Now, I cannot comment on the whole series because I still have 2 books left to read in the series. But commenting just on this first book, it was a 4-star for me. It was pretty good. I think that this book is so different from the rest of them. This book is pretty much about this girl named Selena. That's how I always say it. I know some people say Selena, but I always say Selena. And Selena, she is taken from these salt mines because she was an assassin. She was caught and she was enslaved in these salt mines. And she is taken to be a part of this tournament at the castle. She's trying to be the king's personal assassin to free her from her enslavement. It definitely had Hunger Games energy if instead of a bunch of helpless teenagers, they were all like murderers. I did like this book. I cannot comment on the whole series, but this book is pretty good, but it's not my favorite, not the best, but it's pretty good. I am currently reading the sequel to this, and I am in love. I think it's one of my favorite books ever, and I'm not even ashamed to say that, and that is The Summer I Turned Pretty by Jenny Han. Oh my god, when I tell you, I literally didn't know I would love this book as much as I did, because it is so good. It gives off such perfect summer vibes. So pretty much, if you didn't know, The Summer I Turned Pretty is about this girl named Belly. Belly's mom, Laurel, and her best friend, Susanna. Laurel and Susanna are best friends. And every year, they both bring their families to this beach house. This year, Laurel, Belly's mom, is divorced. So it's Laurel, Belly, and her older brother, Steven, and Susanna and her 2 boys, Conrad and Jeremiah. So pretty much we have this little love triangle going on between Belly, Conrad, and Jeremiah. And there are so many twists and turns in this book. And I understand how this book could be so divisive. Like, I understand why people are like, Conrad, why wasn't this like Twilight? You know, Team Edward, Team Jacob, who? I'm more Team Jeremiah and Conrad. Like, come on, let's get that war started, because honestly, I will lead the armies for Jeremiah because I love him so much. An unhealthy amount. I love Jeremiah. That was a complete side note, but I thought you should know that I am in love with Jeremiah. It gives off such simplistic summer vibes. I felt 15 reading this. 15 is the age of the main character, and I felt like I was 15 again. She's so innocent, but at the same time 15. And she knows what she wants, which is Conrad. Like, no secret from the beginning of the book, she wants Conrad. But he's like the bad boy, and Jeremiah is the funny goofball, and it's just a blast. And the summer vibes are here. This is one of the best books I've ever read, and I never thought I'd say that going into it, but it is amazing, and I gave it 5 stars. Up next, we have another summer read that I did rate 5 stars, but this one is very decisive online. Like, people either love it or hate it, and that is We Were Liars by E. Lockhart. I don't understand how people saw the twist coming. I say that genuinely. It came out of nowhere for me, and I think that this book gives off great vibes, but I think that the twist was so stunning. Like, that's a lie. There are only 2 books that I've ever read, finished, and then sat there just staring, contemplating my life. And that is We Were Liars by E. Lockhart, and it looks like this. I don't remember the author's name, but this is the book. These two books made me just stop. Like, I malfunctioned as a human. We Were Liars is about Cadence, who is part of this rich family, and every summer they go to their private island on Martha's Vineyard. The summer before this takes place, so the previous year, she had an accident and she can't remember anything. And this summer she's trying to piece together what happened last summer, and nobody's telling her anything. I think what's so unique about this is that you can literally feel the fracturedness of her mind. You figure out what had happened the previous summer, you understand why her mind is so fractured. And I loved this book, and it broke me as a human, and I don't know if I'll ever recover from this, because this book did something to me that no other book except for It Looks Like This has done. Okay, so the last three are actually I had very different ratings. One of them I hated, one of them I loved, one of them was meh. So let's start with the meh in the middle one, which was American Royals by Catherine McGee. Now, this also had its little time to shine for a bit and then quickly faded away. I ended up rating this either 3 or 4 stars, and I do have the sequel to read because I really enjoyed it. I thought it was fun, and you know, it's cliche, but it's cliche in a good way. This is about if George Washington had decided to be king instead of president, and the Washington family is still the royal family of America. I do think it is really interesting that because America is, you know, a monarchy, other monarchies in the world that don't exist today exist in this book, such as the French. They are still a monarchy in this book. I do think it's really interesting to just like think of the logistics on what if we as Americans were under a monarchy still. Like, that's really interesting. This book doesn't really dive too much into it, but I think that it focuses a lot more on the lives of 3 teenage kids of the king and queen, specifically the oldest, Beatrice, as she is, you know, going to be queen one day. And I think that it's just good fun. Like, this is a fun book, not to be taken seriously, and I think it's very cliche, but in the best way. Okay, moving on to a book I did not like, actually a series I did not like, and that is the Shadow and Bone series by Leigh Bardugo. Now, I don't need you telling me to read Six of Crows. Like, I know, I have Six of Crows, I haven't read it, but the Shadow and Bone also gets recommended a lot alongside Six of Crows, and I don't understand it. This book gives off major Percy Jackson, Harry Potter vibes, and I'm not saying those are bad books. They are actually very good books that I've read, but as a 19-year-old, I can't enjoy them the same way a 12-year-old would, and that is what I felt when I was reading Shadow and Bone. I felt like if I was younger, I would have loved it a lot more, which is very interesting because some of the things I hear about Six of Crows, which I haven't read yet, I'm like, how can you write these books in the same universe? But then the TV show on Netflix is insane. I love the show on Netflix. But back to the book. I did not like this book. I hated the main characters. Mal and Alina are like 2 of my least favorite. They're so boring. They are so boring as characters that when they adapted this for a TV show, they had to add the crows in just to make the story interesting, because Mal and Alina cannot hold this book up to save their life. I do think that it's a cool starting place if you haven't read any Grishaverse before, because it does really get you started with the world and the magic system, which is a cool world and cool magic system. I just think that characters are so important in books, and at least for me, characters are really important, and Mal and Alina do not hold this book up for me. And our final book, a book I rated 5 stars. I'm not obsessed with it like a lot of people are obsessed with it. I do think it's a 5-star read, but I have no interest in rereading it anytime soon. That is Song of Achilles by Madeline Miller. This book has you know, held the test of time. This book and It Ends With Us have both been on BookTok since I've been on BookTok for like a year. Like, they are some of the most recommended books like on the platform of TikTok, and I understand why. The Song of Achilles follows the main character of Patroclus, who was Achilles's like main companion throughout his life. And the book starts when they're like, or at least Patroclus is like 11, and it ends, and I think they're in their late 20s when it ends, and the ending makes a lot of people cry. Personally, I did not, but I got very sad. The last paragraph of this book like tears your heart out. And then there's no epilogue, no nothing that will make you feel better. You just have to sit there and suffer. It's amazing, actually, and it's written beautifully. I love Madeline Miller's writing. She's very good at describing things. The Song of Achilles was a 5-star read, as it deserves. And with that, we've finished the BookTok books that I have read, which are not all of them. There are a lot I own. I have the Shatter Me series, the Cruel Prince series, Archer's Voice was recently really big, you know. The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue, the Inheritance Games. These are all books I haven't read but own. But these are the, maybe I'll make a part 2 at some point, but these are the books that BookTok recommended me, and I either loved, hated, or felt indifferent on. I liked a lot of them. BookTok, you have great taste, but some of them just weren't for me, and some of them I'm just like, I don't know why this has so much love, because I could never think about, you know, reading it again. Like, it just wasn't for me. But in the end, BookTok has recommended me actually a lot of books I really like. I hope that this, you know, helps you narrow down your next BookTok read. But then again, opinions are subjective. So a book I loved, you might hate. A book I didn't like, you might love, and it become your whole world. Like, wherever it is, The Summer I Turned Pretty, that is my whole world at the moment. That is going to be my aesthetic for this summer. You know, it's May 29th today, so June is right around the corner. I am ready to become Isabella Conklin for the whole summer. Like, that's my vibe. But we've come to an end of my video, so thank you for watching. Please like and subscribe, but I will see you next week if you decide to stick around. I hope you have a lovely week. Bye.